It was a late autumn afternoon, and the wind moved through the maple trees outside my window, like an old friend passing by for a visit. My cottage had been my safe place for over 40 years, ever since William and I built it together with our own hands, nail by nail, board by board. He had been gone for 11 years now, and though time had softened the sharpest edges of grief, it had also left long, quiet shadows in my days. That afternoon, I had been painting in the living room, an old habit I had nearly abandoned after William's passing, but had somehow found my way back to last year. The light was warm, filtered through the golden leaves, and I had decided to work in nothing but my robe, knowing no one would see me. It was my way of feeling free, unobserved, unjudged, as though I had stepped out of time. I was standing in front of the easel, brush in hand, when the knock came. It startled me so much that I nearly dropped the brush. Visitors were rare. Most people called first. I hesitated for a moment, wondering whether to answer at all. But the knock came again, followed by a voice, deep, calm, unfamiliar. "Mrs. Harlow? I'm here about the porch railing." I remembered, with a mix of embarrassment and relief, that I'd called the hardware store the week before to send someone to fix the rotting wood on my front porch. I hadn't expected them today. And I certainly hadn't expected them while I was wearing nothing but my robe loosely tied. I called out, "Just a moment," and tightened the robe sash, pulling it around myself as best I could. I opened the door just enough to peek out, and there he stood, a tall man in a work jacket, holding a small toolbox. His hair was peppered with gray, his eyes steady but kind. There was no trace of surprise or judgment on his face, which I appreciated. "I can come back another time if it's inconvenient," he said. I shook my head. "No, it's fine. You just caught me a little unprepared." He smiled faintly as though he understood. "It won't take long. I just need to check the measurements before I bring the replacement boards." I stepped aside to let him in, pulling my robe tighter still. He moved with quiet efficiency, setting his tools down just inside the door and kneeling to examine the worn section of the porch. His presence was calm, almost reassuring, and I found myself relaxing. While he worked, I hovered near the doorway, making small talk about the changing seasons. The way the winters in Vermont always seemed to arrive too soon. He told me he'd lived here all his life, had worked as a carpenter for over 30 years. His voice was steady, almost melodic, and the way he spoke about wood and grain reminded me of how William used to talk about the earth and soil in his garden. Before long, the measuring was done. He stood, brushing off his hands. "I'll cut the boards at my workshop and be back in 2 days to install them." "Thank you," I said, meaning more than just for the repairs. He gave me a nod, picked up his tools, and left with a simple "see you soon." When I closed the door, I noticed the stillness in the house again, but it felt different. Lighter somehow. As though a window had been opened inside me. 2 days later, he returned. This time I was dressed in jeans and a sweater, my hair pulled back, a cup of tea ready for him before he even set down his toolbox. The work went quickly, but our conversation lingered. He asked about the paintings stacked along the wall, and I found myself telling him about my years in art school. About how I had given it up for a long time when life became too busy, too demanding. "Why'd you start again?" he asked. I hesitated. Because I needed to remember who I was before all the years went by. He nodded, as though he understood that answer completely. When the railing was fixed, he lingered at the door. "It's good to see someone still making things by hand," he said. "Most people forget the beauty in it." After he left, I stood on the porch, running my fingers along the smooth new wood. The wind moved through the maple trees again, but now it felt like a greeting instead of a sigh. Sometimes life doesn't send grand, dramatic changes, it sends small moments. A knock on the door. A conversation with someone who sees you without expectation. That afternoon, I realized that my solitude didn't have to mean emptiness. And though I still spent most days alone, the memory of his voice, the steadiness of his presence, lingered like the scent of fresh-cut wood in my home. A reminder that even in the quietest seasons of life, someone might still walk in unexpectedly and leave the air changed forever.